All right, welcome back. Well, clearly that is what we're going to focus on today. We've got Dixon Osaje, who is a security consultant and analyst. Thank you for coming on this morning. Well, looking at those images, well, certainly they shock a lot of people. The ones we saw in Abuja, in Benin, some parts of Lagos, in different parts of the country as well. In Kano, we understand the youth for the first time joined after several days. So how do all of this appear to you?
For me, I discovered that our youth have lost their conscience. They've lost their conscience. Suffering and
That's
pain.
generic.
Generic, yes. Suffering,
How do you mean?
Yes, suffering and unemployment weakens the senses of reasoning. And when you look at the genesis of all this, because I take my time to visit one or two protest sites. I was in Lekki twice. I was in Alausa twice. And I just try to ascertain, the root causes, because we are looking at it as NSAS. That is primary. But because most of these guys have gone through pain during this COVID-19 period, and after arriving from the COVID-19 pain, they were met with another pain of fuel hike and a lot of stuffs. Then, the NSAS protest just like a spark, just like a magnanimous conflagration. You understand? Because when the human mind has two instinctive drives, that is the Eros and the Thanatos. The Eros is the god of love, the Thanatos is the god of death. And when you are going through pain, when you are going through hardship, when you are going through suffering, when you are going through intense pain in which the government has taken a departure from the social contract they're supposed to have with the citizens, you will lose your conscience and so your sense of reason will be weakened.
At what point did they lose their conscience? Because, up until the latter part of last week, you saw the protest in some parts of Lagos, different parts of the country. After they finished, place was littered, they came through, they were seen cleaning the places. Yeah. So at what point did this loss of conscience
a protest is like a fire, it's just like a conflagration. And there are stages in which it will develop. And that is why the government needs to be very sensitive now, not to bring out the military, because it's going to spike the protest. The first stages of that protest was the incipient stage, where people come out and express their feelings, A lot of people gathered. And the police got it wrong then, because when you look into crowd management, there are various types of formation of crowd, These people gathered together are expressive crowd. They came out to express their feelings. They came out to express what they want the government to do for them. They are not hostile crowd, They are not accusative crowd. They are not a spectative crowd. They are expressive crowd. They came out to express themselves. This is what we want.
So where did the conscience...
Now, from that incipient stage, the police responded. And that is why it is very essential we send the appropriate trained team to respond to crowd dispersal. The use of force must be the last resort when dispersing crowd. But we find out that some guys were killed. Innocent bystanders were killed due to,
Where was that?
Mishandle of in Surulere, a guy was shot dead. You understand the guy? And in Ogun State, somebody also was shot dead.
So was it by the youths? Is this still related to the loss of conscience?
Yeah, it's still related to that, because now from that incipient stage where the police were supposed to manage, or the government was supposed to manage that protest very well, when people start dying, it's going to aggravate the pain. Then it's now developed to growth stage. From growth stage, it developed to fully developed stage. And now we have to be very careful because protests is sensitive. The stages in which we are now is classified as decay stage. When people start killing themselves, like yesterday in Abuja, we saw the reports. A lot of cars were burned.
Because are you lumping everything together? Because if you say they lost their conscience and the explanation, it just appears as though, but you have people who are, you saw the police describe them as hoodlums, persons who were pretending to be NSAS protesters, attacking other people. The police did give instructions, just provide security and guidance for all of those. So are you lumping all of them together as you two, quote unquote, have lost the conscience?
You see, it's not a dating. We came into a democratic system of government in 1999. And you and I know, let me say myself know, that a lot of things has been going on wrong, leadership-wise. It's not from this government. It is accrued, When the democratic system came into power, I think Then I was in Calabar, and we all expected a lot from democracy. You know, people were saying government of people, by the people. But as time goes on, we get to discover, I personally get to discover, because I like being specific, I personally got to discover that we've somewhat experienced a kind of kleptocracy, you know. We have a lot of kleptocrats, you know. And if you want to measure that, you can measure that from the Economic and Financial Crime Commissions, where we have a lot of people in power, you know, after leaving office and being tried by EFCC for corruption and other things. So all these things are you know, are a form of like piling up. It has been piling up. Educational system. Our students are on strike.
Sorry, I just want to understand, if you can just be specific. When you say the youths have lost their conscience, what do you mean?
Yeah, when I say the youth have lost their conscience, is that, for example, when you go through pain, when you go through hardship, when you go through suffering, when you go through unemployment, your senses of reasoning will depreciate. And that's what results to crime. Because people just think that there are sociological factors that precipitate crime.
But the people who are championing these protests, they've been, as Chamberlain pointed out, hitherto very, very civil, very, very peaceful.
Very, very
civil. So would you say then that it's the same protesters that lost their conscience and began to be violent?
No, no. When I say lost their conscience, I'm not talking about the violent aspect of it. I'm talking about the protest part of it, which has been peaceful. You know, when it comes to protest, it's systematic and sensitive. And we must also be careful of conspiracy. You understand? When I say conspiracy, in the sense that one or two people out there might just want to discredit this peaceful protest, you know, by, you know, a form of instigating other people to go and be violent. Because some agency will want to have evidence against this peaceful protest. And the peaceful protesters will also want to have evidence against the government.
So that is what is happening now?
That's what I perceive is happening. That is what I perceive is happening. Because I see no reason why somebody who is... I was in Lekki. I saw guys there. They're so peaceful, enjoying, drinking, marrying, and all sorts.
Now, so there is a crowd now, a potpourri of sorts. We have genuine protesters, just as you said, and you're also saying that there is a possibility of faith columnists who are trying to discredit the entire process. How do we sift, and who needs to do the sifting?
Okay, very good. You see, management of crowd dispersal is fully police duty. And, you know, the police are being careful now because of the NSAS protest. And for me, I thought that we would draw a lesson from the last protest that happened in the United States of America. We saw a kind of psychological application from the police chiefs, for police heads. They were coming in line with the protesters and also, you know, giving them their support. But for what I see myself in Laos, I didn't see any police protection for these guys, because if perhaps we have a police protection that would guide these protests, that would have been able to mitigate perhaps fifth columnists or mitigate any person who is trying to come and, you know, instigate or foil this protest into a decay stage, because we must be very careful in managing this protest.
You spoke about the army, that they shouldn't deploy, but we saw in Abuja that at some point they were, you know, just managing the traffic, trying to see how things turn out. As you can see there, then at some point you could see some of those guys were tear gassed, as it were. So now that this has happened, what do you think of it?
Oh, yeah, I saw. You see, the army solely is not, it's not in existence to hurt the citizens. The army or the military are in existence to protect the state, to protect the citizens. The use of force I have seen in the past few days internationally is not acceptable. You know, you must have passed through some continuum, some processes in mitigating violent or non-violent protesters. Because when it started, the classes were non-violent. And it's still part of Lagos, Lekki, they're still non-violent. In Alausa, they're still non-violent. Seeing the report from Benin and Abuja is worrisome. And I had thought that a kind of systematic approach in mitigating this aspect will be fine. Bringing the military on board is a good development, not to intimidate the protesters, to protect the protesters.
So this is a good development, what we see on the screen?
That's not a good development. It's a bad development, because you are saying the citizens in tear gas. What if somebody is an asthmatic patient? It will slump down there and die. the use of tear gas must not be encouraged, because when you apply tear gas in dispersing crowd, it's very it's offensive, and it could hurt 1 or 2 people. So when we want to apply or mitigate non-violent or violent protesting, the use of force must be the last resort.
I wanted to ask you the other time, and you began to talk about what one may call a standard operating practice for protests and all of that. You've talked about some layers. But then what should be the rule of engagement of police personnel? There seems to be a bit of a confusion here, because on the one hand, the people protesting are protesting against activities of policemen, SARS in particular. Now, these same policemen are supposed to protect the people that are protesting against their activities or the activities of some unit of their force. So how should that play out?
Well, for me, first of all, I had expected the police to carry out a risk assessment of what went wrong, because in any given incident, you first of all go back to the drawing board, carry out a risk assessment. For me, what I have assessed, what went wrong that led to this protest was command negligence and fire discipline. Command negligence in the sense that the NSAS are supposed to, play by the rule of the Robbery and Fire Act, Cap 398 of 1990, where Section 1 proves, it dictates that if anyone is being caught in the act of robbery, it should pass through a process, and upon trial and conviction, the person should not serve less than 21 years. But if that action of that armed robber costs the life of any Nigerians or any innocent persons, or intimidates any person, that person should be sentenced to death upon conviction. If you go to that Robbery and Firearm Act, it's still specifying upon conviction. So that was what went wrong, and that's what I classified as command negligence, because it did not start today. We had expected our police leaders to have acted in line with the corbit of in line of that act. Then fire discipline. Fire discipline. I'm a product of the military. My father was a product of the army. My elder brother is a product of the army. My younger brother is still in the army. He was shot by Boko Haram some few years back. So I have that military background, the army background, in a family we are 4. Now, what I learned 23 years ago when I joined the army is that when you have a gun in your hands, you don't have powers. You don't have the right to cock that gun. And if you cock your gun against any person, then when I was in the army, you'll be charged and dismissed. That is fire discipline. Now, if you don't activate fire discipline in a security architecture, and you're giving people arms and ammunition, the lives of Nigerians will be at risk. For example, a guy chatted me yesterday, sent me some pictures. His leg has been amputated. We're in the same church. And he told me he was shot 2 months after his wedding. I saw the pictures, and he said he never wanted to go out that night, but the wife persuaded him they should go to shopping mall in Abuja. While he went out, 2 guys were dragging themselves, 2 police officers, they were quarreling. And that resulted to cocking of gun, and the guy misfired, and his leg is amputated today. Now, that's where we talk about fire discipline. Fire discipline, the police force must look at fire discipline very intensively, even if we are going to reform.
Part of the scenarios that played out in Abuja.
My apologies. At what point, this is not the way the police started. Yeah. At what point did the police negligence of, their men, at what point would you say it began? Down through
I could, the last time I could remember, let me say the first time I experienced that was in 2003 when my very good friend, a soldier, my neighbor, was shot and killed by the police. That was in Cross River State, which resulted in a kind of state, there was a very tough scenario then in Cross River State then. I think then I was in 245 Reki Battalion, Ecom Cross River State. I woke up in the morning and we heard that he was shot dead in the night. Something went wrong. That was the first time I had experienced that personally. That was in 2005. So that period of time, I began to assess the situation. Mr. Ayo, 2 months ago, I was in a traffic in Bagada Express Road. I was going home, and there was serious traffic. And I saw some guys, police guys, controlling traffic. And one of the guys just was pointing his gun, push, move. And I asked him, I said, hey, why are you pointing your gun at me? Because you never can tell. When you pull on that trigger, you are gone. Immediately I cautioned him that, why are you pointing your gun? He pointed it at me. So I have to pull over. When I pull over, I came back to him. Sorry, I went and met with the senior colleagues, and I asked the colleagues, I said, who is the most senior man here? I want to complain. While I was talking, he saw me. This guy cocked his gun directly at me and told his colleagues to clear. Let me waste him. For nothing. I'm a clear witness. So when I saw him cock the gun, the next thing I did, I just dived from that location. He didn't press the trigger. And I searched around and I checked their badges and I discovered it was from a particular mobile unit. And I called the commander, he was not picking. I called the provost commander, the provost officer. The provost officer was so mad. What he did was that he arrested all of them at the duty post that day and he detained that guy and he called me on phone. Mr. Osajo, we are sorry, this guy's been arrested. I'm still waiting for the disciplinary action that's going to be meted on that guy. This is the problem.
Since when was it? 2003?
You know, this very incident transpired just 2 months ago. So what I'm not trying to say is that this has been a long time incident. And that is why we need to look at the Police Service Commission. We don't need to even have ex-IGP heading that position. The police needs to integrate with society. The reason now, when this policing act we are practicing commenced in 1829 during the reformation process, Sir Robert Peels is the founder of modern day policing, and he gave some reforms. And part of the reforms is that the absence of crime best describes the effectiveness of policing.
But you know, these things are unfolding real quick and fast in ways that people didn't see or didn't think it was going to happen. Look at the scenario that played out in Abuja yesterday, where cars were burnt. I mean, if you check social media and several people, you have some eyewitnesses who were saying that they actually saw that these hoodlums came in police trucks, about 2 police trucks, and then before you knew what was going on, those cars were burned. So those kind of narrative that's circulating all over the place, accusing the police, or some said to be the police, and they saw the vehicle. How do they deal with this kind of scenario? Where do people move from here? What's likely to happen moving forward, having seen those vehicles burnt?
You see, from the incident I assessed yesterday, you know, sometimes we must be very careful not to play into stories. Playing into stories is that I see no reason why my fellow brothers are protesting for the betterment of Nigeria. And I just take up kerosene, foil also, and go and set a particular environment ablaze. That's an arson, and it's really worrisome. But for me, I think Abuja should be a place where we should have a kind of surveillance system that monitors the activities of what is happening in Abuja, because that's our capital. So if more investigation is being launched into these activities, I'm telling you the reality. This might be a kind of a play game, you know, because when you watch the 2011 protest in Libya, the state army were trying to protect Gaddafi, and a lot of atrocities like this played, you know, just to discredit those protesters, and that led to a state of revolution that hosted out the president, the head of Gaddafi. So we don't pray for that situation. These stages we are now, I have said earlier, is decay stage. And when we arrive at a decay stage, when it comes to conflict management, the government needs to be very sensitive. The president needs to come at board now and address the public, and persuade us. We need to be persuaded, because the only way out is persuasion. You know, because in Lekki, I told you I was in Lekki, and most of these guys, they have lost trust, you know, with the government, and that is where trust psychology is very essential in leading the people. The people must not lose trust in you. When they lose trust in you, there's nothing you're going to say that they're going to react so quickly. And that is why we're here today.
It's really, you know, touching. But, you know, what you said now about, you know, managing this kind of, this level that we are in now, it's happened in Abuja, it's happened in Edo, and some pockets of it have been attempted in Lagos and has been quelled by the protesters themselves. At this point, seeing that there is no particular reference leader to talk to about this whole protests, it would seem a lot more difficult than it appears. What should be done by whom? You've talked about the president. You know, if that doesn't happen, what do we do?
Thank you. That's a very sensitive question. You see, you know, earlier I was talking about the human mind. I was telling you about the pain, you know, Nigerians are going through. And let me not even say Nigeria, myself, you know, we are going through pain, you know, and we had expected a country of over 200 million with over 40 mineral resources. Let's look at the ethnography of Nigeria. You know, when we look at the ethnography of Nigeria, you discover that Nigerian has been sitting on a time bomb for a very long time. But now, what the government needs to do now, is to project reasonable security force. When I say reasonable security forces that will come and understand with the citizen. You know, I want to see the Commissioner of Police, Lagos State, go to Lekki, protest with those guys, end SARS now. I want to see some police senior officers go to Alausa, protest with these guys, end SARS now. It happens in America. Those are psychological methods in persuading the citizens. Now the prison citizen will begin to reason and say, hey, we are being cared about. These guys care about us. But when you sit down in your office, you want to start spraying tear gas, you want to start applying forces, it's going to really, put more fire on it, and it will become a magnanimous conflagration.
Well, that's not this angle that you're talking about, you know, based on the experience in the U.S., where, I mean, the policemen did this, but, you know, the political structure in the U.S. is very, very decentralized and a lot, different from ours. Yeah. Here we have a command system that at the top, everything is centralized. Yeah. So if that were to happen, what would be the consequence?
Well, for me, I had expected, you see, it's good for government to listen to the crowd of the people. I've been following China's TV for many years now, about 10 years, more than 10 years, and everything that is playing out today has been discussed on your program. How the government should improve security, educational system, social system. It has been discussed. But the only time I had observed that the government reacts is when APC come to station and cry about PDP activities, or when PDP come to stations and cry about APC activities. That's why we're now having special advisor or media aid bringing out statements. But when sensitive issues are discussed on this prestigious TV station, people don't tend to listen. And that is why I would have advised most of our TV stations to be sending monthly communique to the government that, hey, this is what most analysts have come to say. They need to start listening, watching televisions. It's not until incidents come to these stages. Now, what the government needs to do is to try as possible to reform the police. And if we get the police reform, it must be decentralized. We are talking about a station of 200 million, controlled by one person in Abuja. That's going to cause a command negligence. It's going to cause command deficiency.
But they have also explained that. Look, the entire police structure is decentralized. The number of AIGs, the number of DIGs, the number of state commissioners, DPOs, and all of that. Doesn't that make any difference?
Here in Nigeria, you have from corporal, you get to ASP, DSP, PSP, SP, AIG. The ranking structure is too much. We don't need that in Nigeria.
Well, sorry to jump in. I mean, just that those areas that have been burned, houses, property lost, hoodlums, prison break. This is about the second prison break in Benin, by the way. Yeah. And so, different things going on. What would you advise the protesters to be doing now?
Well, for me, I think I was on the protest ground, and I saw a guy putting on a shirt, Revolution Now. And I approached him. I said, this is not, because as a good Nigerian, we must not instigate this issue to a stage of violence. If these guys are protesting, I will encourage them to protest for the betterment of Nigeria. But I will not support any part of this protest to be violent, because when it started, it was non-violent. This violent stage is really amazing. And the prison break in Edo, I'm from Edo State. I had a lot of calls yesterday from Edo State. And I tend to query that prison break. Because,
what do you mean?
Yeah, when I say query that prison break, is that this prison is a place that houses criminals. And any place that houses criminals, it's not a place you can pierce through, just within a moment of a spur, where are the physical detection protection system? Because before you could, that is why before a crime could take place, the opportunity will be there, the availability will be there, and for you to penetrate a place like Edo State, Edo Prison, are you telling me there was no delay? Is it just that easy to just break into a prison? Because if it is that easy, then the prison services need a reform, so that they'll be able to apply it. For me, what I think happened, I was not there, but what I think happened is funny to me, and I'm still trying to assess what happened. But I got a call from Italy yesterday night from a friend, and his own perception was that the younger, one of the relatives one of their family friends or something was telling him that that prison was being broken by one or two elements with arms and ammunition, and they suspected those people to be a kind of security agent or so. And I reason it that, is it possible for security agent to go and break a prison? That's not possible. So I think it's still open to investigation because we must investigate what went wrong. Because here in our crime, things just happen and we close it. Things happen, we close it. We don't go into investigation and ensure that that investigation is conclusive. Because any investigation that is not conclusive is going to leave the society vulnerable.
All right, then, Dixon Osage, Global Security Analyst, thank you for your time this morning.
It's a pleasure being here.
All right, we're back in a moment. Stay with us.